Hello, welcome to Skye Sweaty Record Review, episode 52. So, it's still the beginning of the year, and the dearth, the desert of new music is astounding. There's nothing new being released, very little. So, I'm trying to get creative with how I can come out with new content, how I can sling new tent, in a way that's interesting and engaging. So today is going to be a new music battle. You know, I love these battles because they're always arbitrary and they never mean anything, and I'm never actually proposing that one is a winner and one is a loser. But this is a new music battle. This is the internet. We love competition. Between Orchestre Abass and the Chrome Sparks. Fight! Alright. Now, first of all, I'm going to use my little bit of production here and do a little bit of Professor Payne's pretentious preface. Because I use the term new music quite ironically here. You see, Chrome Sparks is an indie electro album that just came out 4 days ago. And it's out of Brooklyn, and it's a new album, right? It's new music. I was happy to find it on Tidal. Something actually new. Not the same 21 Savage album that I refuse to review. I don't review things I know I'm going to hate. But it wasn't enough. It's like a 15-minute album. So I'm like looking around and trying to find something else. And that's how I found Orchestre Abass. Now, Orchestre Abass, this album actually came out 2 weeks ago, so it's a little bit too old for me. But actually, the music itself comes from the 1970s. And it comes from Togo. The name of the album is De Bassare Togo. So, how can I compare these things? How could I even think to compare? I mean, this Togo music is not electronic at all. It's pre-electronic, basically. It's like funk music. The music was actually found in a warehouse by some German dude like a decade ago. It was just sitting in a warehouse, no one had ever seen it, and then poof, new music has shown up. According to the German who found it, it's a part of the Islamic funk belt, which sounds like a very uncomfortable article of clothing, but it's actually like along the western part of Africa, different Islamic regions. In the 70s, apparently a lot of them made really good funk music, including this band, Orchestre Abass. So in a way, it's preposterous to compare them. But I'd like to remind you, it's not uncommon to listen to classical music radio. I live in Rochester, there's a lot of it here. And you might hear Debussy, followed up by Bach. At least 150 years between them. They could not be more different musically. Now, we just hear it, we just go, classical music, sounds like classical music. But that would be like, turning on the radio and hearing Despacito, by Bieber, and then the next song here, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. My eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the King, Lord, country, I don't know. It would be like seeing those things next to each other, completely far apart, but we just accept it. So new music really is a very relative term, I would say. So let's compare these things, and I might get a little bit further. There might be some more Professor Payne pretentious insanity coming up soon. But let's start with Chrome Sparks, because that's the actual new album. It's nice. It's a good album. It's very short. It's fairly consistently produced. There's enough variation that I wouldn't say it's monotonous. It starts off with a song with like a soul sample, which mixes in with very, very layered synths, kind of like a late arpeggiator, and ends up being like a nice, breathy song. Very breathy. So if you like breathy electronica, which sounds bad to me, but it isn't bad in this case, you should have a listen. Track 2 moves on to a song called Juno Lion. It's a little bit of a slowed down vocal sample, more arpeggiator. That song's nice because it has a little bit more dynamism. They bring in like a heavier repeated sound. Like they basically double and triple up, or I think it's just one guy, double and triple up on the same melody over and over again to make it sound stronger. And then I'll stop my review of that album with the third track, Be On Fire, which is also the name of the EP, and very funny. I find it funny. Be On Fire. This gets a stamp. I'm putting it in my mix for the next mixtape. And this is great because it has like a nice sort of Daft Punk style vocals, which I really enjoy. Like a chorus and a phaser on it. And then halfway through, like a nice kind of 70s style funk synthesizer, kind of Cool and the Gang-ish sounding, comes on. And it's a very nice, well-produced, well-layered song. And so if I had to review the whole album, I would say it was solid and enjoyable and a bit bland at times, but still worth listening. So why not? Why not you do what I do? Just listen to Chrome Sparks and then listen to Orchestre Abass. You know, it's not like you get completely thrown out of whack. It's not like some kind of trick. But like just see what happens when you listen to these things. The kind of the similarities and the differences. For instance, Orchestre Abass, okay, it's basically just African funk. So it's just funk. It's not particularly innovative funk music, but it's African. So the recording quality is not super. This is not an album for headphones. Listen to Chrome Sparks on headphones because it's well layered. But listen to Orchestra Abass in your car or something because there's these keyboards, these like bled out keyboards. It's a little bit unpleasant. But it's really nice, funky, syncopated rhythms, great percussion, kind of like screaming vocals and maybe Yoruba. I don't know what language he's speaking. A lot of hey-heys, which you can understand. What's really nice about this is that it sounds really loose, but actually they're surprisingly tight. There's a lot of interesting songs where the great chord changes or pauses or breaks that is surprisingly tight. And I would say my favorite song on this is called Soo Mungha, Soosoo Mungha. And this is very much just like a James Brown song, but in a different language and with different production style, with this really heavy keyboard, this kind of bled out, distorted keyboard. And what's fun is if you actually listen to Be on Fire by Chrome Sparks and this song back to back, they work pretty well. In both cases, the keyboards are playing like these solos, which are pretty infantile solos, not infantile, but very simple solos, you know, like just kind of blues scales. And they're not instrumental, but you don't really know what they're singing either. And both of them are very effectively atmospheric. So one of the nice things about listening to old music from other countries is it plunges you in a different exotic place and you can't really place where it is. Because, you know, I don't know what it was like in Togo in the 70s. But this music is very evocative and it puts you there. In a similar way that Be on Fire by Chrome Sparks kind of puts you in, I don't know, a Brooklyn loft. I just assume everybody in Brooklyn lives in lofts. I would say that song gets a stamp. Also a song called Honam, Honam. This is sort of the most structured song of the whole album. It's fun because it's well mixed, so the keyboard's not too strong, it's not too loud, he's not shouting, but it's less funky. So it's kind of a trade-off. The end of the album is less funky and more structured, which if you like that, check it out. And the beginning is much more just kind of extended funk jams. And in the end, I find this album, I find African funk really fascinating. And I don't know much about it. This is probably the first time I've ever intentionally listened to African funk. But I was talking about Debussy and Bach, you know, and that's called classical music. The proper term is Western art music. And really what killed Western art music was Africa. After slavery, and once African Americans were allowed to exist and breathe and create music and be in public together and congregate, that changed everything. Once those African rhythms were able to be integrated into music, into popular music, into schools, into bands, everything completely changed. You know, whenever I teach my students about slavery, I'm a French teacher, so I have to teach them about slavery and the triangular slave trade and the black code and all that. I always tell them, anytime you listen to music and you hear a drum beat, that's thanks. That's thanks to Africa. That's where it comes from. That style of syncopation, that style of rhythm, all is thanks to Africa. So in listening to African funk, you're listening to Africans imitating Americans who are only making music thanks to their ancestors from Africa bringing over the rhythms to America. It's a great, I don't know, funky, funny byproduct of globalization and the horrible, horrible slave trade. Gee, it looks like the dog on top of my tree is going to eat my shoulder. Watch out. Good boy. Okay. So that's my review. Obviously, they're not the same. I mean, they're both roughly in the category of post-slavery pop music, right? They're all based on rhythms. They're interesting rhythmically. They're vocal, okay? But I think if you listen to both of them back to back, you'll have an enjoyable experience just like I had at the gym. It's nice to hear the breadth of music, and even if the African music isn't new, it's new to me. And it keeps my brain flexible and thinking about new things. And that's what I want for everybody. Have a flexible music brain. Okay, as far as my trivia, what TV prop do I have? I have the actual picture of the stair car from Arrested Development. If you're an Arrested Development fan, that's the one Gene Parmesan holds. How'd I get it? Mystery. All right, until next time, where there'll hopefully be some new music. Oh, that was way too folk. Fake? Funk? There's the camera.